everyone. Welcome to Four Sacred Gifts podcast. I'm Dr. Anita Sanchez. I'm Nawa, Aztec, and Toltec, and I'm coming to you from the foothills of the Rockies in Colorado, the land of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute. And they are still here, and I'm a guest here. And today I have just a wonderful, wonderful guest, a woman that I've known, I don't know, 9, 10 years. It's been quite a while. And she just, when I first met her, I just said, "Oh, you already done such amazing, but you need to get your voice out everywhere." And that's the purpose of this show, is to highlight Indigenous leaders and what they're doing, because we really need the wisdom of Indigenous leaders to help give us ideas to live in a different way, in a healthy way. So let me just go ahead without further ado and introduce you to Hasina. It's a Kharbhih. Kharbhih?
Kharbhih.
I usually put the R in the wrong place. That's my Midwest drawl. Anyways, Hasina is the founder of Impulse NGO Network and Impulse Social Enterprise. And having spent over 2 decades in this sector, Hasina is considered one of the leading figures in the fight against human trafficking in India, as well as South and Southeast Asia. In 2019, in 2019, she was listed in Celebrating Changemakers, How Women Social Entrepreneurs Lead and Innovate. 5,000 Women Entrepreneurs was reviewed, and for Innovation of Leadership was selected. Hasina's leadership style was listed in the recent book, Scaling Deep, Scaling Up, and Scaling Out. I'm just so excited to see what she's up to. Before I do that, there's so many awards that she's had, but I'm just going to name a few of those. She received the Mother Teresa Award for Social Justice in 2019 from the Harmony Foundation. She's received the Guardians of Humanity Awards. She's received Women of Substance, and it just goes on and on. It's just amazing. And I want, along with you, to learn more of what she's up to. And we're going to have a fun conversation here today. So with that, Hasina, welcome to Four Sacred Gifts. And why don't you fill us in a little bit more about who you are, and then get into the focus of what you want to talk about. And we'll just get into it.
Thank you, Anita. And it's lovely to meet you again online and to have this conversation and sharing it with the world. And I think it's this entire discussion today. I mean, of course, beyond going into the work that I do, I founded a nonprofit for almost 37 years called Impulse NGO Network that work with unsafe migration across borders and that leads to human trafficking, and how we have initiated an innovation called Impulse Model that actually allow us to have a single window approach and bring collective leaders across the whole pillars, the 12 pillars, as we call it, the Impulse Model, to address this issue, which requires more leadership across board. And Impulse Social Enterprise is almost 17 years, a hybrid model that allows economic upliftment and resilience market to Indigenous artisans in the Eastern Himalayan belt. I mean, in the last 3 years lately, having spent almost, a 2 decade of my life doing nonprofit work and a hybrid work that allows economic upliftment of Indigenous people, I have gone into a journey with purpose with another co-founder, Carlos Navarro Martinez from Spain, that we try to bring in climate impact and migration that are interrelated to each other, which is also the dynamic of how the force factor of climate impact leading to unsafe migration. It's a journey of bringing philanthropists, Catholic philanthropists from around the world to witness the work that we have done for the last 2 decades, the Eastern Himalayan belt, and also the neighboring country that the Impulse Model have scaled out, basically. It's Myanmar, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Thailand, where our regional office is operating right now. So having said that, I would say Anita is like, I think when you come from an Indigenous, background, I belong to a tribe called Khasi, and it's a tribe which is practicing matrilineal in nature, where the lineage is through the mother, and that is, existing in the state of Meghalaya, in the northeastern states of India, where we are calling the seven sisters and one brother. Now, I think growing up as an Indigenous woman and growing up in a matrilineal society, the essence of femininity in terms of being custodian, especially the youngest daughter of the house, and along with it, taking leadership role, has been an immense journey that has allowed me to cross borders, to also allow me to scale very deep on the issue of migration and it interrelated to, climate impact. And when I look at migration and I look at climate impact, I just realized that Indigenous people around the world who are the custodian of the climate and the forests are people who are migrating unsafely because they're losing the land, they're losing the ecosystem. When we have the knowledge and the wisdom to continue to share those ancient knowledge, the wisdom of those ancient knowledge and how we can be protectors. And I think that's a very important element of what we can contribute as world leaders. So I think that has always been a very deep questioning that I have to myself as I travel from one country to the other when I'm scaling the impulse model, that at the core of my heart, I come from an Indigenous upbringing. And I think that Indigenous upbringing makes me so thought deeply. I would think very deeply with the Mother Nature that is around me all the time, and how Mother Nature is so important, and how Mother Nature, if we are destroying it, then people become landless, and that's how vulnerability gets created. So I think that's where I would like to open this discussion today, Anita.
Yeah, let's do that, because obviously it's a major issue. Some are paying a lot of attention to that, and Indigenous people always have, as you said, in terms of being in real relationship care of the earth, of the forest, of the water. And as it cares for us, it's a reciprocity that happens. And yet we're now in a time where all the signals are saying, we've got to change our ways. And so Indigenous wisdom, it just makes sense for you to be here, to be able to share your lifetime. You've been a leader, and what it means to bring Indigenous view. And when you talked about matrilineal, I want to get more into that, because many of Indigenous tribes, I can't say all over an Indigenous nation, all over the world. I don't know all of them, but I've visited and read of many of them. They were matrilineal, and that some of that shifting happened as they were colonized, as we were colonized. And yet now, for some time, it's been swinging back, particularly because we're realizing that you can't have it. It's like they talk about an eagle flying with one wing, the masculinity and the femininity. So it's like you're just not getting anywhere very well. So it's not about displacing men. It's not that at all. It's about bringing the woman, the femininity, that values and knowing in a big way. So I'd love for you to talk more about that.
Having been born and brought up in a Khasi, family, where my mom comes from a clan called the Kharbhih, and which we belong to the Khasi tribe, who are living in the state of Meghalaya, among the 8 states in the northeast of India, and we are often called the Seven Sisters, and that's the place that I grew up. The matrilineal society among the Khasi, or my growing up days as a young woman, trying to explore myself within my own communities, my own home. And today, it's just 1 year that my mother passed away, and being the youngest daughter, and also the role of the Khaddo, or the youngest daughter, being the custodian of the lineage, the custodian of the ancestral property, made me realize more deeper the femininity side of being a custodian of what has been left, with wisdom And these wisdom are just not about cultural practices. It's not about the cultural practices that we have in the house, the different wisdom that comes along each practices. In the last 1 year, I would just bring back to my own personal journey out here is that,
Please do.
it is something that I knew. I was the youngest daughter. When my mother was alive, I knew that my role as a custodian become very important to learn from my mother, and to learn about the Khasi tribe, to learn about the rituals that is being practiced, because each ritual has significant steps of how the community evolved and how we basically evolved as human being. We evolved as human being that have the wisdom of everything that we take along with us. After my mother passed away, I was reflecting back on every little things, from the ritual during the time of the death, the ritual that happened just as a death anniversary recently on the 12th of February, the fact that every little thing that is there in the house needs a ritual to be performed, so that Mother Nature will continue to bless the family, will continue to bless each one of us in the family, because it's just like the mother of the house, is the goddess of the house. So that's the femininity of how I grew up and how I see myself when I practice or carry forward those engagement. And
Yes.
along with it, I have the other side that I've been working in a very deep development initiative, from the age 17, where I started a nonprofit organization that work in the Eastern Himalayan belt that address indigenous vulnerability, especially in terms of climate impact that leads to human trafficking. Makes me also out there making decisions, interacting with the larger world, interacting with multicultural group of people, and stakeholder and the system and the government. So I play these two important roles. But then I just realized that leadership from the context of an indigenous woman is the essence of our femininity, is the strength that we bring it out in terms of holding, having the capacity to hold, having the capacity to be resilient, which is a very natural process. The resilience to issues around us, which is external or internal, the resilience of being more deeper in the way we practice or bring people around us, has been a very byproduct of what I do outside my home. And I realize I think that come naturally, Anita, because I belong
Yes.
to Matrilineal society. And I think that is something that I realize that I don't have to be a leader to prove that I have to be like a male. I can still celebrate my femininity and still make decision outside and still be more caring, highly empathy, and still have more resilience, because the directions of how I would bring people together or how I would bring communities together. It's a very natural indigenous process of community, because we always live in community. We always celebrate death together. We always observe festival together. It's always community based, right? So I think it's a very natural
Relationship.
process of coexistence that I come from. So I think that is the relevance of how I would describe femininity from the context of where I was brought up, how I was brought up, the tribe that I represent. It's also the value and principle I practice in my leadership role outside my home.
That's so wonderful. I know people listening are just, well, it's like you said, when we're born with this and that understanding of knowing who we are and what we are, and we don't, the force against masculinity and stuff doesn't make any sense to us, because we're so full of who we are meant to do in our role and our purpose. And that's not bounded. I mean, the leadership role, looking at you, you're kind of humble. So Hasina's always been, she never says numbers and stuff, But I know she's been part of leadership is passing it on to another leader so that she can keep doing the work and expanding. But in the work that she did, or is still going on in terms of climate and human trafficking, how those are tied together. Over 74,000 women, children have been rescued from that because of you and your organization. And now who the new leader is, I'm just going to send lots of light to her because I assume it's a her, but it could be her and him. But anyway, that's just powerful. And I think I hope the listeners and the viewers are seeing is that this power, this feminine power that you just exude, Hasina, but do not take it as being incapable or too soft so things don't get done, because that is the actual opposite. And so I'd love for you to talk more about that. And before you do that, I just want to say one thing. So I learned when Hasina's mother passed, and all those of you listening, all of you who have lost your mother, those who may be afraid because she's ill now or whatever, it's a difficult time. It's really hard. So, and learning about your mother, I'm assuming there's a whole legacy going back and back and back to the ancestors, because she was an incredible, powerful woman in that time. But even in this time, she would be seen as a powerful, incredible woman. And that's what you're doing. So I think this is a great conversation to continue with whatever direction you want to go in terms of what are those specific things that you just say, I automatically bring to bringing communities together, to always focusing on knowing that relationship is a part of this, whether it's with the land or with people or people to people or officers, police and government leaders and community, whatever it is. So just tell me a little bit more. We just want to keep hearing what it is you're doing that we can learn from you.
Well, the impulse model, is an innovation that evolved over the last 25 years plus. And it's an innovation that got World Award from the Global Development Network under the Japanese Most Innovative Development Project, which stand on 12 pillars called the 6 Ps and the 6 Rs. Now, the 6 Ps and 6 Rs evolved over the years. It brings together the public, the private, the community under one umbrella. And the 6 Rs, transcends the action on the ground, which become a single window to address the issue of unsafe migration and human trafficking. But going deeper in the last 26 years, the realization comes so naturally to me that prevention is an important element of how we would be able to give women and children a choice not to migrate unsafely. And having said that, when people lose their land, when people lose their forests, when people move out from the where they inhabit or where they're living and move out to other places, they become vulnerable because they have nothing economically with them. They become laborers. In other land, they become laborers. So in this world where people are moving from one place to the other, the vulnerability grows higher, and that's how exploitation takes place. And in the last 3 years, the impulse model, especially under one of the pillar, the impulse model prevention, we went to relook into the richness of indigenous land, the richness of how we can actually get around 900 acres of land, 300 in each state of the northeast of India, where I come from, Manipur, Nagaland, and Mizoram, where it's bordering Myanmar, where we're having a lot of Burmese refugees migrating because of the civil war, and how these two countries has so much similarities in terms of the indigenous Chin Burmese, and the similarities of food and culture and practices and agriculture and so on. We initiated and innovated where land has been provided by the community. 50% of the Burmese refugees who are indigenous population who have moved out because of civil war, and 50% of the indigenous tribe of Manipur, Nagaland, and Mizoram was brought together. and this community land that has been provided by the community through legal and agreements, there were multiple food cropping that took place. The initiating of multiple food cropping, where indigenous people choose their nutritional value food to replant it, to actually multiply the seed and initiated seed bank, was one of the first option of bringing the richness of food security through indigenous practices. And in the last 3 years, we saw the value of how food brings people together, not just from the nutrition point of view and food security, but the enhancement of how indigenous people have so much farming knowledge that they are addressing climate impact rather than leaving this land barren or allowing the land to go unfarmed or the land unused. We integrated this approach. And beyond going into food security, we are preserving the knowledge, we're preserving the seed, we're preserving the multiplication of the seed, and we're bringing people to be more as one, as community. And this is another way it's preventing unsafe migration of indigenous people from both the borders. My realization that culture, food connects people, and indigenous people has a very natural process of how they connect. And reviving forests can only happen when land is being provided back to indigenous people, when support system is being provided, and that is how the initiative took forward. And beyond that is looking at skill set, traditional skill set like the weave, that we realize that half of the refugees who are indigenous people who have basically migrated across the border, who are living in refugee camps with the host communities who are indigenous people on the side of India, are being able to weave again through our hybrid model, Impulse Empower brand, and giving them access to resilience market. It's bringing down the vulnerability, but enriching the cultural identity of indigenous people is something of a great value and a great sustainability introduction for us. And I see this working out much more productively in terms of how indigenous people, even in the mode of a conflict situation, can still be custodian of the forest because it becomes natural for them. It's a very natural process. And that is where the work of the organization that I founded brought together that we need to go back into the basic of farming, the basic of food, the basic of indigenous food, so that we can protect the forests. And coming from the state like Meghalaya, where secret forests, are forests that are looked after by the community, and how these secret forests are actually the provider of oxygen, and they are natural. And here we are, this knowledge could be, in fact, inform across the world how we can revive this kind of knowledge building across the globe, because that is something that needs to be told, that the science of nature, it's very much a natural process for indigenous people. And that's what we're trying to do. And along with it, we see that the feminine side of women in indigenous population, the natural process of to govern the whole community work, to get involved into farming, to get involved into weave, come naturally to them. So they don't have to be told what to do, but it's just a very natural process because that's what they do every day. And along with it, the strength that they have in the physical part of handling the farm and the feminine side of bringing up the children in their home, it's an amazing combination. And looking at that, I just realized that I would say gender equity is a natural process among indigenous people. So it's not about equality. It's equitable. It's just there naturally. And I think for me, who come from a matrilineal society, I don't go and fight for where I have to get my leadership role. I don't have to fight for my seat. I own my seat, So that's what it means to be a matrilineal. For me, it's like I own my seat. I don't have to be told that I need it. It's a natural way of me saying, this is mine, and by not losing my femininity at all, but having the respect of equity that men and women coexist together. The masculine and the feminine is the essence of how the well-being of human and mankind is an important element. It cannot be in two separate directions. The wisdom of indigenous people is the femininity and the masculinity has to be a natural process. You don't fight for that. It's a natural process that you need to be there together, and you need to be there in an equitable way. It's not that you are supposed to be here, I'm supposed to be there. It just comes naturally. And I think that is where I grew up, applied from where I come from in my work life. And then having worked with different communities, indigenous tribes in the region, that practice of being in a matrilineal has led me to bring shared leadership, in a very natural way. And last year on November, when the organization I founded when I was 17 years old, Impulse NGO Network, I realized it's time to have a new leadership. It's time for me to move out of it, because it should not be founder driven. It should not be driven by a founder. It should be an institution by itself. So I was so happy that, from a feminine leadership, we have a masculine leadership, taking forward the Impulse NGO Network. That is Tashi Rapten Barfungpa, who is the chairperson of the organization right now. And when I say that, I say it with a lot of proudness that a feminine institution, with a feminine leadership is being taken forward by a masculine, So how does naturalness happen, Because every time it's going to be like a masculine part taking over, it's being fought by a feminine, but here it's a feminine leadership being taken forward by a masculine. So the natural process comes because we come from the indigenous way. We don't look at who is who. It's about the natural process of adopting. So I think I see that as, a great learning and a great importance that how the world can learn from tribes like us on what we practice in our day-to-day life. So I think that's how I would like to share. And that's how the transitions of my leadership right now, the feminine to the masculine, and seeing the masculine taking over the feminine institution, But then I realized that over the years, the shared leadership had both the masculine and the feminine. And the feminine and the masculine was an intertwined, that went together. And that's why Impulse is alive, thriving, and it's taking its next step, and it's expanding, not just in 5 countries, but it's expanding worldwide.
When you talk about this, Hasina, it is so natural. And I imagine that some people listening or viewing are like, what can that be? Because the worldview is different. And the kind of power over that has happened so long. And I'm not going to say it's not happened in some indigenous communities. They're working their way back to being more matrilineal. But do not make a mistake. The women are very powerful leaders, make lots of decisions, but they don't do it against the men. They just do it. And that's the thing that's harder to explain, but you do it so beautifully. And I love the concept.
Embracing, Anita. For me, it's an embracing. You embrace it. It's a natural embracement.
Exactly.
I don't see myself fighting over, a masculine leader. I see myself embracing it very naturally. And I would see the masculine embracing what I started, so it's a very natural way of taking it to the next level.
Yeah. So you remind me when you say that of a prophecy that has many parts to it, but the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, one part of that is that women's voices, that femininity, that those values and things need to rise, because what has happened is that the eagle, it has 2 wings. one is masculine and one is feminine, but they're not separate. They're together. They're what make the eagle. But if the eagle is constantly depending on the masculine alone, then it's not getting, it's circling. It's not. But when we bring those together, and so this is a time that I know in many cultures, indigenous cultures, is that the rise of the feminine, the rise of women's voices. You spoke of it as goddess as well, and that is so powerful. And if anybody doubts that, all they need to do is look up more about you and listen to this, and you can see, no, you when you go and you embrace, that's what you're saying, embrace, like the hoop of life, you embrace the masculine and feminine, then we know that some of those values in us are also masculine. But what's the balance of bringing us in rather than being pitted against each other, which is just so beautiful. So, yeah, and that seed that you talk about is so powerful because the seeds are everywhere. It's like we have a leader, Black Elk, who's very revered in America, is actually known pretty much around the world, and he would always say that the circle of life, there is no edge to the circle of life, and the center is everywhere, meaning that we're all important. It's all connected. So when you connect so clearly the reviving forests, protecting them, regenerating land, all of that, and then the care that happens with the people in the land, nourishment, and all those things in community, of course, it's going to reduce all the challenges that we have, including one of them, exploitation, sexual or otherwise. And so that I really want to just stress so that people really get that it's happening everywhere. And you, with this model, have taken it to a place where you're sharing it, shared leadership with others, indigenous and as well, those who do not call themselves indigenous. So just, I'm just really excited that you're here. I want to make sure that you get to share more about the model, because you talked about there were 12 pillars, and you talked about the 6 Ps, and I don't know what the other 6 were. Maybe you had named.
R.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
So the impulse model, the 12 pillars are the 6 Ps, which is partnership, prevention, protection, policing, press, and prosecution. This is where the private and the public partnership system chain takes place. And the 6 Rs is report, rescue, rehabilitation, repatriation, reintegration, and restitution, is the action of how services under one umbrella, under one single window platform, is being achieved through a consensus that human trafficking, which is a global problem, cannot be addressed by one single organization. Every organization has different expertise, different strengths, and how these strengths can be brought together under one umbrella. That's what the impulse model is all about. But along with it, the larger context of our learning in 37 years, which is this year, is that the economic upliftment is a vital importance of giving choices to women who are the custodian of taking care of the land and the property and the nature and the family, need to have. And where we capitalize traditional skills of these women, where they have a choice to be entrepreneurial from their home, like a very natural process. Everywhere in the world, you'll find indigenous people rich in craft, rich in textile, rich in all kind of beautiful art that they produce. What we try to do is revive, restore, bring in the essence of resilience market, so that they are able to continue to bring the resources back home through the art and craft that they are skilled and how that can actually brings economic upliftment to the community and giving them choices not to migrate unsafely, was the other element of the impulse model, prevention. That prevention mechanism becomes an important element. Yes, a brand like Impulse Empower is telling the story to the world on how sustainability of textile and the fashion that we call today are so much a knowledge of indigenous people, and how these indigenous knowledge can actually be preserved, can be revived, so that to attain sustainability in fashion, we need to go back to the past learning. And different indigenous people in the world have different skill set, different art, different preservation art that has been dying art. But what we are trying to do in the Eastern Himalayan belt is preserving, upscaling, building the capacity, introducing it to the larger market so that people will get to understand, know, use it. And then at the same time, it also balances the unsafe migration that we are trying to achieve under the impulse model. So it's a combination which is very holistic in nature, you know. But along with it, I would say when Journey with Purpose evolved in Nepal, when Carlos Navarro Martinez, who is from the Canary Island in Spain, was visiting my work, and we were traveling to see the work in Nepal. And we were just trying to have this conversation at where Lumbini is where, Lord Buddha was born, and I go for meditation. For me, meditation is, being able to reflect on my own journey, my own personal spiritualism, and understanding, what I have been doing and how much I should do, and what value does it bring to the world. It's all about and detaching from anything negative. For me, positivity is the essence of what life should be. And that's when Journey with Purpose evolved out of this conversation, because his experiences from the masculine part of Mother Nature and climate impact and working with mangroves, brings this conversation with me that, nature preservation is the support system that people can have, so that we are not just protecting the environment, but migration can be reduced. And my learning lessons ultimately connect to that. And that's how Journey with Purpose was born. And in the last 3 years, we've had, riders, coming in a bike ride and stopping in the Impulse Empower villages and trying to witness, how these communities are living, how they are actually having their food and cultures, and, and how their processes of producing sustainable textile can be introduced to the larger world, and and how the ecosystem of Mother Nature can actually be a co-learning processes. So that's what Journey with Purpose is all about, and how resources can be shared, resources can be contributed, how the world can learn from one another. And for me, coming from the Eastern Himalayan belt, I think the fragile ecosystem is an important part, like any other part of the world that is very fragile at this moment, and how we can value and add value by having larger contribution through, podcasts like this, through talk that you're doing. And I think, the 4 secret gifts that you've written, is, I think one of this essence is also the gift of what conversations can actually transform and help people evolve to go deeper into their own personal journey spaces, and how each one of us can get involved and learn from one another and not duplicate action, bring in the richness of the wisdom that we have got. Yes, and that is what the femininity and masculinity can coexist together.
Yes, that's so wonderful. And thank you about hooking together everything, because what you're talking about, and I just, how you live, how you talk, how you be, is all very holistic. There's not the separation. And that's a big thing that I think is working against us when we have all these challenges and just not care and loving the earth and the water. and we're not caring and loving each other. I mean, these are not separate. These are connected. And so when you do that and people listen and they're starting to listen, they're listening more and coming and studying what you're doing. I just love that. I just would like lots of people to go there and learn, because to bring that back is a real shift in a worldview of that. It's not separate. It's all connected. It's one. It's unity, which is one of the gifts: forgiveness, healing, unity, and hope in action. And those gifts are so alive in everything that you said, and many more gifts. But within those 4 gifts, that I can see them working in all the things that you've done. And that comes from the living wisdom, the wisdom of the 27 elders from all over the world who brought together the Eaglehood prophecy and those gifts. And then they have a messenger now, and one of them, and carry this out, because this ancient wisdom, we need to remember, and you're talking about this way, it may be ancient, but it's living, it's alive. And it was, when people keep thinking, oh, well, it's over there. No, it works now. We're still here, even though all the different things happening. And the other thing you said that I'm hoping that people will think, or you may have more words about it, is this whole thing about migration. When you talk about the people coming from Burma and, being refugees, and how you have people, other indigenous people, embracing them and bringing this together and, tending the soil and the forests and all of that. We're in the middle of great migrations and due to climate. So again, it's a prevention that you're already doing. If you will stop and turn back to this holistic view, which indigenous people are at the forefront of care and love, learning from nature. We're part of nature. And so if we follow the cycles, which are very feminine, as well as masculine, but very, very feminine in nature, then we can resolve this. Some people listening may come to this because they want to hear some solution, some possibility, and you're all about that. And there is. And if you go and study Hasina and her work and all the team that's there, that now has moved all over to different places and they want to bring it out to the whole world, then you see that's where this indigenous knowledge, wisdom, which is also nature's knowledge and wisdom, can help us have a thriving world where joy, I love when you always talk about joy and some really serious situation, but it's for us to have joy. That's the natural state, is for us to have joy. Yes, challenges, but we can work through this because we know with nature, when we're cooperating in collaboration, everything is possible. So I thank you so much. So I want to hear a little more about where you're heading. You've said some about it, but I want the listeners and viewers to know more specifics about what it is that you're needing to do, your dream of what would happen, so that they can be part of the mentally and heartfelt putting energy in that, or maybe even say, hey, wait a minute, I can help with that. So I'd love to hear where you're going and your dream, and so we can really understand what support we can give you as you're giving support to all of us.
Journey with Purpose is an endeavor and a journey that is going to be a dream that is becoming a reality, and it's going to be more sustainable if globally Catholic philanthropists come together and journey with us, by visiting the sites of the ecosystem that has harmonized climate impact, that has initiated preservation of sustainable textile, that has worked in the reduction of human trafficking, that has worked into the food security of what Indigenous living is all about. They can be part of that. And being part of that means they can take one step by visiting and joining us in Journey with Purpose, by connecting to us through the website that we are coming up, especially for Journey with Purpose and how they can get involved. The bike is just a transportation of adventure to these places, but the harmonizing engagement of self-discovery will happen when they visit the indigenous population in the Eastern Himalayan belt, which actually is going to be the route. And the second route that we're also having is just not about going to Nepal from India, which is bordering Nepal, but we're also having the route in Thailand, especially with the mangrove, and how mangrove is one of the beautiful, important ecosystem of Mother Nature. When we talk about the water and the sea, and when we talk about the mountains, it's all the ecosystem of the agroforestry that we have. And within these agroforestry, within these mangrove plantation, is a culture, value, and principles of food of people, their conversation, the sustainability action that one can contribute, not just by coming to visit, but at the same time joining this ride that we're coming up very shortly. The second part, we have done a pilot one last year, and see it with your own eyes, be part of it. Then they used to say, seeing is believing. But if you are being able to explore your own life journey through these travels, then you're able to see the reality and what you can contribute. And that's what I would look, my next step and that step. And I think that's what Colors and myself are trying to bring this to the next level, by having a ride within India, which is from Shillong, the place that I started Impulse NGO Network, to Sikkim, to one of the states, which is among the seven sisters, is a one brother. And the other is stopping over in these Impulse Empower villages. The other is from Assam, from the Impulse Empower villages to Nepal, crossing to the Eastern Himalayan belt. The third is in Thailand. So, from the mountains and the seas, the richness of Mother Nature, Journey with Purpose will open the doors for philanthropists, supporters to engage themselves. And that's what is my next dream and the next journey of what I would like to see, sustainability of these innovations that has transformed a lot of life in the last 37 years, and how we can multiply it.
Yes. And you just come alive. There's a strength and sweetness about you, which is just the whole femininity always being present. But I know then that invitation that's being called out to come and see for yourself, those that can, those who aren't able to read about it, but come, because there's something about place that we understand when you're in place, wherever that place is around the world. But here we're talking about India, Nepal, Thailand, the work of this group, to be able to see, then something happens to us as human beings, because we can inspire each other. We can feel inside our own cells, our own bones, that what's possible. And many things can be, with some modification, depending on what part of the world, Earth you're from, but to go back and listen more clearly about that. And so I totally understand your joy and calling people out. Hasina knows that once a year I take a group into the sacred headwaters of the Amazon, and it totally changes things. When they come and they actually see what the Amazon, the importance and learning from the cultures and the traditions, and how there's oneness. It's all unified. So it's not just saying these words, oneness or unity. It's living it. And that's what you're doing, is you're living it and expanding it out as that energy needs to be. So thank you. And I would like you to, we'll make sure that on the written description of this podcast, that we'll have where people can contact to learn more about how to do this, for those who are both philanthropists, individuals, because all of us have impact, and we can decide how far and why that impact is. And coming from heart, coming from the feminine as well, then it has far-reaching. It is far-reaching. So thank you so much. I just want, if there's any other things that you want to talk about, I don't want to cut it short. I know we have a few more minutes, but so I just want to leave it to you. Like, is there other things that you want to share? I don't want you leaving here and going, oh, I should have said that.
Well, Anita, I think I've shared a lot from positivity of what we do. Always transform life, transform nature. Negativity actually destroy and is destructive. So I only would like to say to the whole world that anything we do it from a very positive space, a space of happiness, a space of being thankful, a space of being able to give, because whatever you give comes back to you. When you give it positively, it comes back to you. And when you give it negatively, it comes back to you in various forms. And I think the belief of indigenous people that Mother Nature is the goddess of who we are. So when we give back to Mother Nature gives us back in abundance. So that's what I would like to conclude.
I'm not going to reframe that because what you just said is beautiful. And so listen to this. And if you need to go back and listen to that again, it's really important to live a life out of the knowing of gratitude, happiness, and all of these things that you were speaking of. So thank you so much, Hasina, sharing your dreams, sharing the work on the ground that you're doing everywhere, how you're inspiring hearts and minds of people, all different sectors, and seeing that how we can be in collaboration, because the reality is we are all connected. So why would we want to harm ourselves or the other when we know it comes back? Like you said, just as abundance comes back, sufficiency, so does the negativity and the destruction. So we have our happy work to do, joy and responsibility. As from my ancestry, we talk about it, and they go together. And so thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. And again, folks, you'll look at the website. We'll make sure that underneath it'll have how to get a hold of Hasina and her work and her dream. And to all of you, I wish you well. I wish you embracing the femininity and the masculinity, not only in yourself, but in others, because it will take all of us. And it's much more fun and collaboration with each other. So like the eagle who wants to fly and really go where it wants to go, it needs both wings. And so you have very much demonstrated that to us, Hasina. So with that, thank you all for joining us in the 4 Sacred Gifts. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you
so much, Anita. Thank you.